Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us on this Wednesday, rainy Wednesday here in London. We've just got a few more people filtering in from the wait room. Appreciate people rushing to get some food in the middle of the day and settling in front of their laptops for today's session. But I do encourage you, if you've already joined us, turn your camera on so we can see you, open up the chat, let us know where you're joining us from. And also let us know if you joined us for our session that we held on Monday as well. We like to see if there are repeat visitors. Um, but in the interest of time, since we only have 90 minutes, I'm just going to get going. Those of you that don't know me, my name's Morag Doig and I lead the Alumni Career Centre here at London Business School. And I want to welcome you all to session 2 of our Careers and AI series, Navigating New Opportunities. And then on Monday, for those that came along and listened, we talked about how AI is not just shaping how we work, it's reshaping the what that we do. New industries that are emerging, new roles are being invented, the skills that are required to thrive are evolving faster than ever. So today we're going to talk about, what does this really mean? What does this shift really mean for your career? Where do you fit in this AI puzzle? And how can you make informed and strategic decisions in an area of such rapid change? Guiding us through this conversation is our series host, Dr. Toby Velt. Toby is an AI entrepreneur and founder of Probability AI and Budscout AI. He's a former executive at Google, Amazon Web Services, and Microsoft, and he's scaled teams from 1 to 1,000 plus. And his expertise really sits at that intersection of AI, business transformation, and talent strategy. And it's on that point that he and I connected and bonded and talked about setting up this series. He's also an educator at London Business School and an alum, and he helped design and teach in the AI business programs within executive education. So we're really fortunate at the Alumni Career Centre that he's helped us shape this series and is steering us through these often tricky conversations. Our aim behind this series, as I explained on Monday, and I'll say again for those new on the call, is really to make the conversation about AI open. Honest, accessible, not just for technologists or AI evangelists, but for anyone really trying to understand, what this means for them, what this means for their work, for their teams, for their future. So today's session, I'm delighted to say Toby and I are joined by guest expert Vladimir Baranov. He's a global EMBA alum and one of our Alumni Career Centre coaches. So double whammy for me today, which is wonderful. And together, Toby and Vlad are going to dive into some of the fastest growing AI driven roles. That blend of technical and human skills needed to succeed. Now, we touched on that on Monday, and we're going to really dig into that topic a bit more. And some practical ways to pivot or future proof your career. Before we get started, though, a few housekeeping points. We'll have about 45 minutes of Toby and Vlad in conversation, surfacing some of the key themes and trends I've just mentioned. And then we're going to open up the session for Q&A. So I encourage you, think about your questions as we go through, put them in the chat so that we don't forget them. But also don't be afraid when we get through to that Q&A session of putting your hand up, unmuting yourself and joining the conversation directly. We want you to make best use of the 90 minutes that we have together today. With that in mind, and now less than 90 minutes to go, I'm going to hand straight over to Toby so we can get going. Toby, thank you so much. Looking forward to today's conversation.
All right, and thank you for the wonderful introduction. And as I said on Monday, Morag has done all the heavy lifting to make this series happen. We are so fortunate to have her as part of our group and as part of our collective alumni group that we get to have and carry forward. So I was just looking at the list of people. It's good to see some familiar names pop in here from Monday, as well as just from the LBS community that I know. And yeah, so today, we're going to adapt just a tiny bit from Monday. We're going to try to make it even more interactive and make sure that if you like, you can get your question answered. You can come on screen, you can participate, get your voice heard. But okay, let's jump in. All right, so we're going to kick it off. I'm going to hand it over to Vlad in a second. He's going to introduce himself, tell you a little bit about his background, and then we'll jump right into it. So let me hand it over to Vlad.
Yeah, thank you so much, Toby, and great to be here. Excited to talk about this very novel ways for us to improve our careers. I'm Vladimir. I'm calling in from Ithaca, New York. It's a city where Cornell University is between Toronto and New York City. I got my MBA, as Morag mentioned, about 12 years ago. Seems such a long time ago. And since then, with of course the help of LBS, I was a co-founder of a fintech startup and an executive in aerospace startup. And now I work as entrepreneurship coach with technology leaders and deep technology startup. I think AI topic is super fascinating. We are all discovering ways that it can help our careers, it can help our companies, it can help our leadership's approaches. So I'm very excited about the questions that Toby will ask, so we can bring this topic to the forefront of our conversation.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And thanks again for participating today. So Vlad, I think, given your role, given your experiences, what are some initial thoughts that you might have for an audience like this? Navigating, as the session title is, navigating new opportunities in this AI world in which we live now.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first emotion that comes up is nobody really knows what's going on, and everybody knows what's going on. In a sense, you're gonna have self-proclaimed AI experts like myself, and I'm not sure what category Toby was gonna put in, that tell you that, hey, I think we see some ripples in the water which will point you in some direction. But the reality is we don't know 100% where the future will be in 5-10 years with the AI developments that are coming along. This is the fastest ever technology transformation that the world has ever faced. Not even connected to the internet of 2000s, not even connected to like global search and internet social networks of the 2010s. This is the fastest ever the world has seen the change. Platforms are being born and killed like every moment here and there. So in a sense, like as we're talking to Toby, we're observing these different trends, and from our experience in working technology, we can roughly tell you where it will be in nearby and what impacts you will face. But it is everybody's responsibility to continue monitoring these changes in order to adjust your own careers and company strategies in order to take advantage of that. So it's kind of like first thoughts there, Toby. What do you think?
Yeah, no, fascinating. And I just want to maybe give a small chunk that I took out of the most recent Future of Jobs report from the World Economic Forum that, Vlad, you turned me on to. We can supply the link to this free PDF, by the way, and it's roughly 300 pages, so this is not a light read. But in the introduction to this very large document, there's a preface, and then in the preface, I recall, and I'll quote here, they talk about the trends, changes that will result in disruption when it comes to the future of jobs. And this is this year, so this just came out, and it says number one disruption: advancements in technologies, particularly AI and information processing, robotics and automation, and energy generation, are expected to be transformative. These trends are expected to have a divergent effect on jobs, driving both the fastest growing and the fastest declining roles. Job creation, job destruction, in a sense. So with this backdrop of where the World Economic Forum believes the world is going, what do you see in terms of creation and destruction of actual roles, and what kind of advice would you give people as they think about their career?
Yeah, that's a big topic. Generally, associating yourself with any new trends gets you in a spotlight. Learning a little bit about AI, about robotics, able to converse, having some experience working with a specific companies, be that in a contracting ability or giving a talk or giving a chat or making connections in the fastest growing industry, will definitely give you a leg up. Because in the end, we're somewhat tribal, and in a sense, if we know the language of the insiders, we're more likely to get through the closed doors, which for some others might be locked if those sesame system open kind of key lock password, we don't know. But specifically for those roles, it is our responsibility to look into our own skills and see which ones will be amended with AI and which ones are likely to go. And some of the things that come to mind is that research, search, anything menial over I would say even short period of time, like a timeline 2-3 years, is probably going to go away. I myself use the tools very aggressively in a way that I sometimes even stop using Google, and I ask my GPT agents to do the research for me, and then maybe I will spot check their results for what answers they give me. With the robotics, it brings up an interesting dilemma where a lot of low-level labor will probably be disappeared, and it's going to be done disproportionately to affect countries that cannot afford this kind of technology as of yet. So we'll see a huge amount of change from physical labor. But I also see opportunities for anybody who is doing physical labor to migrate into more information technology space and take advantage of the tools that AI offers to augment or even to retrain themselves to interface with this new technology. Given that the interface with this new technology becomes just a language and no longer code, I recently posted on the internet, on the LinkedIn, thoughts about that the language is becoming code when we're interfacing with the machines, and it becomes much more accessible to everybody to go ahead and action the machine to what to do, in the sense that you're removing a layer of complexity that was there before and only accessible to computer scientists, and now available to all leaders, anybody who can think logically, anybody who can project manage, to instruct a swarm of your AI agents to do the bidding for you. And that opportunity is unprecedented, and it allows you to multiply your own work efficiency and outcomes on the things that you do, as you have never been able to do before.
Yeah, wow, I love that. So let me dive into that just a second here. So one question I think we get a lot of is, okay, I know this AI thing is impactful. I know it's coming, it's changing jobs everywhere. Look, my job is a stack of tasks. And it's almost like you're saying, I don't need to go back to school, become a data scientist, and learn how to program Python. Instead, I need to take the skills I have and maybe promote some, demote others, retool some. And in that stack, what kind of recommendations do you give people to focus on if they're not going to completely turn into a data scientist, which we thankfully think is not required?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think what brings up the best analogy for me is a class of operations management at LBS, where it helps to use models from that industry and that science to start thinking about how to operate with the machines. It's the throughput, it's the bandwidth, it's the amount of memory that the machine might have to execute the instructions. Because at some point you might come up to a task where you have to process 1,000 terabytes of data. And if you were not a computer scientist, you might not have been able to estimate how long it might take. But now interfacing with the machine, you might be able to get a second intuition, which will tell you, okay, I think my machine is not powerful enough for this. Or you might be able to have a dialogue with the machine of whether or not it's able to process this amount of data. Then there are concepts of sequencing, and I'm talking to a very educated crowd here, so I'm sure you're all familiar with which thing comes after another, what are the dependencies, and all of those components need to be there. At the same time, being aware of the machine's limitations, that anything that it's coming back at you might not be 100% correct. And what are the mitigating incorporations do you need to put as part of your prompt or as part of your process in order to ensure that the work that is being outputted is the most helpful for yourself? And some of the things that may help to think is that a lot of AI agents, in a sense, could be mini employees. And if you've been in management and leadership for a long time, those models work very well in automation of AI. Let's say if you hire 1,000 agents, how would you instruct them to do their work day to day? What kind of things do they need to look out for as they're doing their work? What is their standard operating procedures? What are the things they should not be doing or should be doing? And should there be another agent which is supervising the work of other agents in order to make sure that the output is correct? And when you apply similar models that you picked up at LBS or other similar studies, you still can apply the science of management to this management, and they're going to be able to successfully manage a swarm of agents to do the bidding for you.
Yeah, let me just do a quick side quest on agentic AI for those who haven't experienced it yet. It's a relatively new, very hot topic right now, and the concept is AI performing for you a set of activities as an agent to complete a particular task. For example I used recently was you're in a new city and you're interested in spending the day there, and you say, look, do this for me. So this agentic AI component understands your schedule. It understands you, what time you get up, what you like to eat. It understands the weather, the traffic, everything else. And it starts to put together itineraries, and then it takes real-time information and might change and say, well, looks like we're sold out at this particular restaurant, but I know how much you love Indian food, so we're going to shift you over to this one and get a reservation for you. And then I can see that we need to leave now, so I ordered the Uber because traffic is. So it's a smart agent, but it's also taking real-time information into context. And so in terms of stacking up your job in series of tasks, an agent might be a chunk of those that many employees use together in an agentic sense to get something done. And it's hot right now because it's a powerful way to increase productivity. But as Vlad pointed out, there are some risks and some knowledge that you need to be aware of when using it. Especially around some generative components not being 100% factual, perhaps, but okay. So amazing. And so on that, digging in just a little bit about agentic, what do you see or think about, on one hand, boosting efficiency, productivity, and on the other hand, the possible hindrance or destruction of creativity in the workplace or for an employee?
Interesting. I'm trying to answer in a way that doesn't dive into the philosophy of what does creativity mean. Again, how much autonomy we all have given our brain that is given to us at birth. Let me try to answer this way. I don't think invention of a hammer hindered our ways to push the nail into the wood on our own. I don't think invention of a printing press has killed the writing industry. I don't think invention of a calculator has prevented us from doing calculations on paper. And if we look from the same lens on AI as more of an instrument of multiplication of our efforts versus our replacement of what it means to be a human on this planet, then I think there is still a big gap that AI needs to fulfill. As of right now, AI does not have agency. AI, as we understand it, AI does not have desires. AI does not have goals that are not set by the humans. And I think this is where the human ingenuity and creativity does come in. As you're herding a swarm of 1,000 agents, it's a direction in which they have to go. And how do you combine all their distinct capabilities together to wield the result that you want? Another way I was able to compare it to is that AI is just a pure compute that is available to us that we now can instruct using English language, while before our compute was available in using instruction of code, which is again a much more complex layer to access and much more complex layer to manage. and it become a lot easier for us to leverage compute that is available in this universe for us to wield our bidding. And I'd say from that perspective, the future looks bright. I don't think it will limit our creativity. It would replace some of the ways that we're doing art, we're doing writing, but I don't think it will completely replace that.
Yeah, so there's an ongoing argument in the sense of creativity being destroyed by AI. And then, you might see examples where it's being enhanced and I think of individuals in parts of the world that don't have access to Hollywood studios are now making short movies that can look fantastic. So they're telling a story, which is a human construct that we tend to gravitate toward. And they have now the tools to do it where they really couldn't before. So they're, in a sense, being encouraged to be more creative as opposed to less creative. I mean, would you agree with any of that?
I think it's both at the same time. In the sense, if we really converge the meaning of any artistic experience, it is landing in the narrative. So in the sense, anybody who implements that narrative is sort of has a role or is an employer of somebody who is creating the narrative. If you're an artist working with somebody who is setting direction for you, are you truly an artist? Are you truly being creative when you're executing the work? Are you providing the options for implementation, the narrative that one person on one captain or one leader set up? So it's kind of, I feel like, still room for interpretation. If we look at any Hollywood productions, a lot of movie directors, I don't think they allow a lot of room for creativity for the people who report to them, and they are the ones who are dictating the creativity. So there's probably a room to argue, are they true artists when they're not on their own? And perhaps in this case, AI is actually freeing up those who did not have access to capital, did not have access to connections, did not have access to Hollywood elite in order to put the movies and put the narratives out there in high quality, as a high quality production. Now it is available. So in a sense, AI is a great equalizer when it comes to not dictating, sharing the narratives which are out there. And perhaps what we're going to find out that a lot of capable artists are able to create similar kind of captivating stories that were only available to the few before. And in that case, all of us, maybe not me, can become very creative and demonstrate our ability to woo the public with our stories.
Yeah. Let me touch on one more thing and then we'll get back to task here. But in our previous conversations, you mentioned, and you mentioned it here briefly too, that English is the protocol between humans, or languages, the protocol. And now that is also becoming the communication protocol between humans and AI and robots in particular. Natural language processing, NLP, is so good these days. We're doing voice and text input into a system that answers us in text and sometimes voice. And if you think about this is good in the sense that now I don't need to program to communicate with the system. I can just speak. And we're seeing trends like vibe coding come along to completely eliminate coding altogether. And now I'm just prompting, I want a website that does commerce and so forth. And it creates the code behind the scenes. But in that realm of, okay, we don't have to program to interface with this thing and have impact. We don't need to necessarily understand everything about the algorithms and the hypertuning and all of the technology stuff. We have a platform to interact with the system in its language. And given that fact, and given we're business people generally, what would you recommend for upskilling activities or continuous education, lifelong learning kinds of activities for this audience?
Wow. Okay. You took it not where I thought you were going to take it, but that's it's a great question. I think there's a lot of opportunity. In the end, I think there's probably going to be a great convergence to the moment of somebody's desire to relieve their pain through certain solution. And in a sense, like it's going to all dance around that. In the business world, if somebody has a pain, when you provide a solution, they give us $1. and everything else will be fulfilled by the machines. But let's look at specific industries, especially the ones which are being dominated by AI, especially marketing and advertising. All the ads in the future, almost near future, and many of them are right now, will be generated by AI. Because in marketing, it's a lot of experimentation that needs to happen in order to figure out which of the particular segments of populations are interested in a specific product. That experimentation will go super big because of what AI is there. So in a sense, if you are launching a business, there has never been an easier time to generate that marketing content, marketing copy, marketing strategy, and automatic reach out. So the online sales, outbound sales via text, via voice, via video will be all automated. I think Mark Zuckerberg said the other day in an interview that at some point you just need to provide us with the budget and we'll do the rest of the work for you to match you with the clients which are interested in your product. No more creative, no more copy, no more lead generation, nothing. They will just provide you raw clients because it will be able to fill in the marketing gap in between using your prompts, using your needs, and so on. Operations. Let's start actually with self-improving operations. Your own reminders, your own triggers, your own calendars, your own emails will be managed with the machines. So in the sense that if you can learn additional tools to how look through your inbox, how to filter it based on specific prompts that you're putting in. Oh, does this look like a client? Does this look like a vendor? Then put them into the queue. I've seen somebody already implement a channel where every single vendor who is reaching out to them to LinkedIn goes to a specific landing page where they can book a time for a specific time to review their process, in the sense that then your attention is not being distracted from their perspective. Hiring. Take a resume, take a position, overlap, give it a score. That's been happening now for maybe a few years already, and it's going to be even more in details in the future. And if you're not doing that, and if you're reading it on your own, you're at a disadvantage of missing a really good candidate coming through, or at a disadvantage by being considered too slow or not giving enough feedback back to the market, and that you might be perceived as a cold employer. Training, learning, ample opportunities. Type into ChatGPT, what would you like to learn? Give me a 12 months of achievements across the different milestones. Where can you find this material? Explain it to me as if I'm from a different country. Explain it to me as a 5-year-old. Access back from the machines to the humans has never been as great as before. I don't understand a lot of concepts, but when I asked ChatGPT to explain me if I was a 5 or 9-year-old, very simple models put together, I am able to understand such concepts that I didn't think I was able to do before, which were locked away in the ivory towers of academia. What other things? Coaching. If you have a difficult topic that you need to practice through, ChatGPT is really good at generating options, generating different strategies that you can approach some of the difficult conversations that you have to have at work. Fundraising, sales practices. Let's say if you're not really good at sales or really good at fundraising, ChatGPT can spin up a simulator of a salesperson, of a client who you would be pitching the sales to, and you can interact with it as if you were doing a real job, and they will provide you feedback on how well you did as a salesperson. So many countless opportunities come up, and I think it really comes in the context of a specific role of whether you're coming from as a developer, as an HR expert, as an executive on a business trip. Just right now with Google AI, they released a new tool, I think, for Google Meet, where they're doing real-time translation of any language, adjusting your mouth movements to that language. I think it would facilitate so much cross-border converse, and Google Translate will just go away in the way form it was before, and you're going to be able to converse with everybody real time. Man, that actually was a great question. I just have so many more suggestions, but I'm sure you got other things to talk about, Toby.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant, and a great reminder that there's almost no end to the depth and place that this is. But you've hit on something where it's important that there are places where it's being used initially, most often, generative AI in particular, as you point out, and for reasons that probably are obvious. Marketing, Marcom in particular, marketing communications, has been an early adopter, and we're seeing finance is actually taking off. Customer service as an obvious first place to use Gen AI inside of companies. and that can make some good sense too. But let me ask you about, because last time on Monday, we talked a little bit about how Gen AI in particular is taking over low cognitive skill tasks. And, which is great. You're thinking, as you pointed out, summarization, text and prose creation. Great, wonderful. Get that off my plate so I can do the higher level activities. I can do some more strategic thinking. But what about, what happens to these entry level employees in work if most of the tasks in their job are low cognitive skills? Is there, I just see that kind of evaporating because it went to the machines, and now there's no entry point, or maybe the entry point changes. I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, that's a great one. I thought about this for a while, and I think entry jobs are going to be gone. But they're not going to be gone in a way that we believe gone. They're just going to be transformed into the same entry jobs plus AI. In the same way, if a contractor comes to a job site without a tool belt, they're absolutely useless because they're not able to execute any function. But if the contractor comes and they have a tool belt with the proper tools, with a proper hammer, with a proper drill, with the proper whatever, they're 100% eligible to the task. They just need to be pointed to what task they have to execute. They can take a look at the plans of the house, they take it to speak with the head architect, and then go ahead and start implementing. In the same way, it's almost like we can trust the AI to train an entry point employee. I think that symbiosis between somebody who hasn't been using the tools but is in command of English language, can import the protocols of the company they are working for, or the protocols of the team they're going to be working for, and collaborate with an AI to produce the function of which was before produced by, let's say, a dozen of entry-level employees, but now going to be produced by one entry-level employee with the help of AI.
Yeah, and yeah, that'll be an interesting transition. So this is a subject, another subject I want to touch on that's I think about a lot, and I'm asking the question because I know very little about it, the answer. And it's really about how AI will affect different countries, cultures, societies differently. And I'm concerned about it. And like I said, I don't really know the answers of how this will play out. But my concern is that AI will not equally benefit everybody. What are your thoughts about jobs, entry level, higher level, and its AI's impact on that in let's say a developed nation versus much less developed nation?
Yeah, that's a very important question, and I have sort of a two-way to answer that. One way, as I mentioned, I think the benefits of AI from esoteric, more meta input in the things of information technology, in the way of thinking, are going to be spread somewhat equally. We all have access to the internet, and access to the internet has been propagating across the world really, 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 really fast. We still have a portion of the population that doesn't have access to the internet, but as soon as you have access to the internet, you have access to a lot of AI capability. Maybe not at the same power, but at the same AI capability. Maybe we can compare it to like access to oil or some sort of other precious resource that is spread evenly or unevenly across the world. Over time, that resource will be available to more people, and it's going to become more and more and more powerful, especially to solving the problems which are local to the place where it needs to be solved. And there's going to be different kind of problems of complexity, but I believe eventually it will equalize that all the problems that need to be solved locally would be effectively augmented by AI. Now, where I think it will be a bigger friction is at the level of robotics and manual kind of work. Because right now manufacturing is done in countries where labor costs are much, much lower, and thus those countries are able to benefit and capture some of the value by doing that manual work. And if robotics come to play, and that's becomes a lot more prominent force in manufacturing, or just our automated manufacturing is going to be able to take out that kind of labor, that would be problematic. However, what can also happen at the same time, given how fast robotics have been optimizing, the cost of manufacturing each individual robot will go down. And in the end, if we are considered about lifestyle and, let's say, agriculture and a way of living, all of those benefits will be imported back to the countries which were constructing manual labor before, because they can use the same labor now to construct those robots who can do the farming for them, who can do the cooking for them, who can do the washing and cleaning for them. So in a sense, over a longer period of time, I believe that work will be also equalized. But I think we're going to see a lot of friction and stress in between.
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting point you make, because where time is more valuable, an expensive robot starts to enter the picture. Fair. Where time is relatively cheap because there's a large unskilled workforce, robots will not enter until the cost of labor exceeds that of the robot costs going down, individual skills perhaps going up over time. My concern is that the robot is sold by the West and reaps the financial gain, although the individual in the poorer nation is now making robots. You start to play out all these different scenarios.
Let me add on to that a little bit, just because I had experience in robotics. In the end, robotics, maybe I'll bite my tongue for this, but I don't think robotics is very complicated from parts perspective. Yes, there were enhancements in our motors, there were enhancements in our precisions, but overall, it's just a bunch of parts. In the sense, a number of parts for each particular robot will be reduced to the minimum, where you only need so many joints in order to work effectively. And the thing which is driving the robot, AI, it's already here. Like, in a sense, able for the robot to run inference on the models, which would be transferred from the West. I don't think it's going to be a problem, because a lot of those models are open. And let's say if we look at models like Llama 2 or Llama 3 or Llama 4 and 5 and 6, which are going to come out, we can leverage all of those models already now to run some of the robotics. Now, they're still require a lot of specific hardware to run inference on smaller appliances, but I think over time there's going to be enough improvements where we can leverage that. Maybe not the cutting edge, right? But for everyday activities, I don't think that's going to be a problem. But absolutely, again, I want to bring back that there will be stress in between. But I feel like any population that is struggling with certain things is more incentivized to start paying their attention to the issues that can get them back on their footing faster. And I think a lot of countries will refocus on that robotic and manufacturing and integrating models into their processes.
Yeah. It's going to be fascinating the way that plays out. Let's bring it back to employment again for a second here. So in one of the McKinsey reports that we talked a little bit about on Monday, they show that 2030, it's not that far away. A lot of the tasks and the skills required to do those tasks are changing. Again, removing the low cognitive skill, and then what increases in that void is more of the emotional, the human connectivity components that business managers will increase, perhaps because of more time. But I want to ask you, what are your thoughts about the human-centered role and the importance of that as jobs change?
I think so. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a neuroscientist. So in a sense, I wish I could bring in some of the models from there to try to understand how it would relate to that. But I do still believe machines cannot offer comfort, understanding, rapport, empathy that we are experiencing as humans as we're communicating with each other. We want to be liked by others. We want to be loved by others. We want to be celebrated by others. And I don't think it feels the same way, at least for me now. I'm not sure, but Gen Alpha, what it means to be celebrated by machines, what it means to be loved by machines, what it does it mean to be getting praised by the machines. And I think until those feelings are not figured out, they're still going to remain the domain of humanity. And as we are growing our businesses and we're paying attention to that, because of a lot of menial work is going to be taken away by the machines, it creates room for fostering those relationships better, for having more non-meeting meetings where we can collaborate in a more tribal way within our companies. It creates opportunities to create more stories and create more meaning in the work that we're doing versus creating ourselves into molding ourselves into the shape of a machine that it has to do some menial labor. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to converge our experience into what does it actually mean to be human? What does it mean to exist on this planet? What does it mean to do work of love and relate to other humans in a meaningful way?
Yeah, exactly. So let me ask you a question we asked on Monday as well, is that what can we do now to help ensure that we don't service the AI, but the AI allows us more human interaction, more gives us the agency to be more human.
It's a good one. I don't know. I think this question is very difficult because of the rate of improvement that AI is going through, and also kind of runs against the definition of what does it mean to be human. And I think for every person on this call and every person on this planet, that definition is very different. And I think protecting what does it mean to be human and for AI to take over, I think those lines are drawn very differently for people. And in a sense, maybe it comes down to just protecting your individuality and the way that you express yourself and the way that you come to the world is what remains after all the work has been done. And your personal brand and expressions is the regression that is left after we've taken away all the things that we should be doing. And I don't want to say take away, but I would say like we have replaced it more effectively with the machines and only your identity is left. I know that work is that something we all as humans crave to do, well, at least I do, in order to express ourselves and to find meaning. But I think we need to start thinking about the future far away. What does it mean when we have no work? What does it mean if like all the machines can do work and we can do pretty easy substance? I'm not talking about a world of poverty and depression. I'm talking about where every single work that a job that needs to be done can be done by the machine. What does it mean for us? What do we do day to day? And I think the answer there is still very much open.
Yeah, and I'll put a plug in for session 5 of this series. And we'll be talking a little bit about a research paper from Stanford called The Humanity in the Age of AI as the topic of that paper. And there's actually some indignation in there that AI is forcing us to define what it means to be human. And in that definition, it creates a narrowness of humanity. And there's a discussion there, like, not fair. Why did it make us do that, for ourselves? So, we'll get to that a little bit more at the end of the series here, but it's a super important topic, very interesting. And I think now is the time to start acting on that so we don't get too far down the road and say, wow, I don't know how we got where we are. We need to make some alterations because we're serving the machines, not the other way around. Okay, so Vlad, we're coming up here. Any closing thoughts on the discussion we just had, and then we're going to open it up to the questions from this group.
Yeah, I think one main kind of summary thought that I want to share is the same one which I shared in the beginning, is that we don't know where this is going. And the way that we can perhaps have the greatest advantage for the future is to keep ourselves more aligned with these changes that are coming to the market, to these changes that are coming to the workplace, that it is our responsibility to understand how each of those changes impacts at least the nearer term situation at our work and our personal lives. If a new tool is coming out, like for example, Google had I/O presentation yesterday, which blew everybody away. It is your personal responsibility to understand what each tool is about. Maybe not in depth from technical perspective, but keeping abreast of the technical development and how it can impact your individual role and how it can impact things at your company will be probably #1 recommendation.
Yeah, right. And that's great advice for where we are today. I mean, this is what there's so much unknown, but you still need to react and act in this situation. So amazing. Okay, so Morag, if now is the good time.
Yeah, brilliant. Tag me back in. I've made so many notes in that 45 minutes. I've struggled to distill it to one question to kick things off. So I'm going to start with a bit of an observation that sits in the middle of our super existential humanity and AI question and our skills over here question. So what I'm seeing certainly in my coaching conversations and just in my conversations more broadly out there is this sort of desire to understand now or see more clearly the difference between skills and technical skills and competencies. And what we're talking about here is how AI can augment the work that we do and also take away some of those more menial, low cognitive load tasks that we don't need to do. And so I guess my question to both of you is, do you think that we will also see this ripple out across organizations from an incentivization point of view, in that we can no longer have performance review conversations or we're saying, here's what I did the last year, here was my list of objectives and I ticked them off. And it's going to be about, here's how I added value as a human through my competencies that I've brought to the table. It's always something that we've struggled with, that difference between skills and competencies. But could you both just give your thoughts on how you see that shaping out in terms of, even in the next 5 years, we're still going to be living in organizations that are going to require us to justify our work over the past 12 months. What's that going to mean?
Before you take it, maybe I'll show my ignorance, but Morag, how do you define the difference between the competency and the skill?
Well, that's what I want to know from you. So I think it's quite a personal understanding. So I tend to think about skills as technical capabilities that allow you to do a certain piece of work or deliver a widget or create this, or whereas the competencies for me would be the thing that sits at the top of your kind of T-shape, right? So it's how do you lead others? How do you solve complex problems? It's the intangibles. It's the level of emotional intelligence you bring to the how you do your work, not the what work you do. So for example, take me, can't add up to save my life, can't be an accountant, but have a number of skills that might allow me to operate in a professional services environment quite well.
Yeah, so there's a procedural knowledge which is important today. I think businesses will stay on the same metrics that they are on largely today, and those are typically financial metrics or impact metrics if they're government agencies. And I don't think they're going to abandon those because of AI. And so that trickles down through to incentives to say, what kind of revenue did you bring in? And, these sorts of activities. So I think if you say, look, what kind of impact did you have on the business? And did you successfully use the technology tools that we allowed you or gave to you or cultured to get there? Did you break the law? Did you cause an ethical dilemma? Did you hurt our brand? And so, those are all negatives, but if you did it, this is your how, if you did that, you performed to the business metrics using the tools without the negative damaging the company, that's good. I think that's where we're going to be for the near term. And so I think like how you got there and you use ChatGPT for right now, there's still a concept of you cheated. You cheated. I think that will go away, the concept of you cheated. And, like when Excel came out, were you cheating because everyone else was doing it with a calculator and a piece of paper and whatever? People thought, yeah, wow, that's too easy. Feels like you're cheating. And I think that concept will go away and it will come back to just basically impact on the same business metrics we have today. And if I could improve that by 5% by giving you access to this GPT, good on me, good for you to use it. I think that's where we're headed the next 3 to 5.
Yeah, I certainly see a lot of that AI guilt in terms of I can't admit that I didn't do this and I subjugated responsibility for this piece of work to ChatGPT because then they might think I'm not doing my job. So I think there's something there that we'll have to work through, on a sort of individual level, reconciling the space that AI will take up in our day to day. Vlad, what about you? Skills versus incompetencies versus skills.
I think to me, and maybe I just have a different model view. I think to me, everything is either skill or competencies. Like to those two words from definition perspective, or my experience perspective, I think are very similar. Because being able to be empathetic, somebody create a rapport with somebody is still a skill. Like there's still some sort of relationships or contrast that we're making internally, emotionally wise. Well, emotionally this is good, emotionally this is bad. This is a better fit. So in the sense, like you still are in control of the actions, your words, as you are the discovering and journeying on the landscape of other people's emotions. What I think is interesting, as you brought up, as far as figuring out the performance reviews, one, I think it will make things a lot easier because of how many inputs that AI model can take in and evaluate whether or not, I don't want to say you're doing bad or good job, but whether you're not the job you're doing is aligned with what outcomes the company desires, so what the bets the company has made, which allows us to actually understand, especially the people at the bottom of the pyramid of a 100,000 to 200,000 people company, whether or not they're actually contributing to the bottom line. This is something that I struggled with when I was working for larger companies in my early career. I had no idea what the impact am I making, and this is one of the reasons that I left. So there is an opportunity here to reduce churn and turnover of employees who are working for large companies. Number two, it also allows us to do a frequency of feedback, which maybe sometimes could be abused if you're doing it real time, whether or not your activities are aligned, which would probably tend to generate anxiety, but it will allow us to actually understand whether or not we are contributing to the bottom line. Because in the end, I feel all of us want to be told like, hey, you're doing a good job. You're doing the things that which matter, the things that have meaning and that are aligned to this company's mission. So that will, I think, become more easier, although again, it could be a subject to abuse if overused.
Guys, now there's been loads of questions that have come in. Some of them are quite long. And so I invite you, if you've put a question in the chat, to unmute and ask it directly before I butcher it. Otherwise, I'll start with a really short one, which was from James. I'd say that where creativity is killed is in the declining value of output due to Gen AI. This makes it a lot harder for skilled people in creative lines of work to earn a living. Look at the almost complete death of stock photography as an example. He goes on to say, how might freelance workers move into and demonstrate meaningful capability in AI from a cold start? So coming back to that creativity piece, and then also, if you are coming into an organization and are expected to hit the ground running, how might freelancers demonstrate meaningful AI capabilities?
I want to answer the question with a question. Let's look at photography, right? What did photography kill? There was a huge movement at some point where the photography killed a lot of painters' jobs or other visual artists' jobs, because in the end, it's just point and click. How much of creativity is in there? I think what we can probably do is actually look for what are the seeds of creativity could be in the way that we're prompting Gen AI to do something. What are the ways in creativity that we understand the functionality of the instrument that we're using to create art, its limitations, its imperfections, and out of that to create artistic meaning with our work.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I'll add that, as we talked about Monday, the generation Gen AI is it's trained on the past only, obviously. And so it can create new set of pixels. So if I say I want to see a cat skateboarding on the moon, it's never been seen before, but it can generate that because it knows cat, skateboard, moon. put it together and you say photorealistic, make it sparkly, make it whatever, and it can do all of that. So I think regurgitating and creating something that's similar in the past is going to be quite a bit easier now because of Gen AI. But creativity has never seen the future inside of a Gen AI system. So the creativity could be making something that hasn't been seen before, not an assimilation of parts and pieces of what's been seen before, but something truly new and novel that will always be open for humans to do and to write. And it's not just photography, and to write about and so on. Create a new story, create a new paradigm to fit a story into, for example. Those will always be available, and I think giving more people tools and access to the creative component is going to be there, as we talked about, and then doing something that's completely novel is always available.
I think sometimes we conflate creativity and new, right? Like we're only truly creative if we're adding to the corpus of knowledge in the world. And that's, I think that I don't necessarily agree with that. I've just completed a course with IDEO University on design thinking and AI. And from my point of view, I consider myself to be quite a creative person, but it's helped me stretch the boundaries of that creativity even further by thinking about how I ask the questions, how do I build my prompts? It then jogs me to think about new things. And so in having that conversation partner, I'm able to be more creative, arguably. And am I creating brand new things? No. But am I able to then use the output of that to do bigger, better, more interesting in my current role? Yes. So there's a sweet spot I think sometimes we miss, where it has to be all or nothing when it comes to creativity. And you both just reminded me to kind of dial myself back in when I think about creativity and AI.
Yeah.
We've got some other cool questions coming in. Again, they're really long, so if you put a question in the chat and you prefer to ask it yourself, please unmute and do it. Otherwise, you're going to be hearing a lot of my voice for the next half an hour. Jeremy, your question is in there if you want to ask it and you're still with us. I invite you to. I've got a short one at the end. What are the challenges and solutions to managing confidential and commercially sensitive data using AI tools? How can a company protect its IP while leveraging AI? Great question. Vlad, come to you first.
Oh, okay. I think it's really not that much different as it is now. In the sense, AI is a remote tool for many companies, in the same way that most of the SaaS are a remote tool. So basic aspects of cybersecurity need to be monitored for the data not to leak somewhere else, and also basic law of countries that we're operating in, whether or not the data, GDPR or other rules are being violated when the data is being shared between organizations. And if the organization running the AI model is violating those rules, I think it just goes back to the legal courts. What also can be done is that a lot of models now are becoming smaller and smaller, and companies with a much limited budget, I know some companies may say yes or no, but H100s are now available for a few $100,000, and for any company that has a few $1 million in revenue, that is something that could be afforded to host in-house, or maybe even lease in-house, and you can run Llama or any other model in-house that you're able to constrain the data from getting outside of your network. And in the future, it will be even easier. And for those companies which cannot afford it at the moment, and I think that is true for any applications out there, you're still taking the risk by sharing the data through the channels of the internet in order to get the value.
Yeah, let me punctuate that. That's right on. So large language models like ChatGPT that you might use, or Claude, or any of them, your prompts are basically given out there. And the corpus of data that those are trained on are typically three things: all websites in English, Wikipedia, source of all truth, even though it's not, and then English written literature, books, magazines, things like this. And so it doesn't know about your internal proprietary data. So let's say, for example, you're a law firm and you've been around for 50 years, you have a great history of communication with your clients. That's not public information. You don't want it to be public information. So how do you take advantage of this powerful GPT kinds of technologies, but have access to your private and no one else does? So you can create a small language model, as Vlad pointed out, and you can train it on, you can use the front end or a pre-trained model as the language interpreter. So it understands basically how to take a prompt and how to answer you in the language, usually English. But it's been trained on, meaning privately trained on, all your history internally. So you can ask it, hey, we're talking about the Simmons case. Give me, what do you think our appropriate defense should be? And it will create some kind of defense. And so there's going to be new opportunities here for companies to jump in and do this. But this can be made, and it can actually be created on something as simple as a laptop, depending on how much data you have, using these pre-trained base models like GPT-2, BERT, DistilBERT are all examples of small base models that you can build off of and then train with your own data. And then you can prompt it and it will respond. And it's usually very fast because it's not thinking about the world of, the history of llamas. It's only concerned about the Simmons case and, it's super fast, it's private and proprietary. And I suspect many organizations will start to do this and build these things out because it's pretty straightforward, very cheap to do compared to an LLM.
Thanks, Toby. Jin, do you want to pop your video on? Give us your question. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. And I have a question about how to practically integrate AI tools or AI mindset with human behaviors. Now I'm trying to evolve myself to be like co-intelligence, human intelligence with AI intelligence. Over the last 12 months, I have been trying using different tools, but I haven't really built up a regular pattern or systematic approach to integrate with AI tools. And my job is I work in a fund as a global tech analyst, and I do want to integrate with AI tools and learn or develop my capability in a more regular way with some simple tips. I'm not sure whether you could give us some tips, or whether you have seen any successful human case they have been successfully integrating AI tools and intelligence with human intelligence and behaviors. Let
Oh, great question, great problem. You're cutting edge. Let me say, I'll give you an example, but basically it's data embedded technology. So you have a system, usually in the cloud, that is receiving data perhaps continuously. It could be weather, it could be, in your case, maybe you're doing due diligence on companies and it's sourcing new companies and then getting information about them, their financials, for example. And then it is using AI in a just-in-time kind of environment, meaning I have a new piece of data, now I'm going to work on it. And this is a very cheap way to use AI without expending constant resources, CPU resources. So then it does something and AI makes a prediction perhaps, or it generates something new. And then that will be put into an application via API typically, meaning the application is asking it, do you have anything new? Would you like to show me something? What's my report for today when I woke up? How can I, navigate this thing I'm working on? And then that's delivered to you digitally in a application or a format that you're probably already using. So it could be your watch or your phone or something like that. And as an example, I'll give you an example of where this works. So I built a robot that scans plants, growing plants. And there's hundreds of robots that scan these plants. And on the robot, that's full of sensors, and all this sensor data, it's dumb. It's just a collection device, and it sends it up to the cloud. And the cloud is using AI to analyze all this data. Most of it is just noise. And if it does see a problem, stress in the plant or some kind of growing or an issue that will cause a lower yield of the plant, then it percolates that up to an interface for a master grower to say, in this location, in this building, in this room, in this plant, on this pipe, there is an issue we need to go send. So it is using AI mostly in the background, but to identify and to send you real-time reports so you can, as a human, commit your resources to go and find and fix that issue.
Thank you.
That was a great answer, Toby. Something I would add. So Jin, your question was about integrating AI into like the human
Yes.
work. Some of the things that came to me is one of the analogies which I mentioned before. If you can think of any tasks in your daily routine that you would hire a human for, would you be able to write down the job spec in as greatest detail as possible and have AI do it? So that would be one model that you can have in your head. If you're working by yourself, if you're working in a small team, think about if you would have hired a person, if you would have hired two people, what kind of work would they be doing for you? And that would be like first level of abstraction that you can use to figure out what kind of things you can take from your day-to-day activity to give to them. Another one, just let's say for yourself, if you're trying to change your own behavior, figure out triggers, key events in your day activity. Perhaps you're doing research and you should remind yourself, why am I doing this? AI can do this much better. You're formatting Excel spreadsheet. Why am I doing this? AI probably can do it better. Me taking, looking at the picture and copying down information from the picture. Why should I do it? AI can scan it and interpret it better. Or for example, why am I doing this work? And I'm taking actually one of the board classes through LBS Alumni Center. And one of the tasks was there to create your own board resume and give me 30 pages instructions. I uploaded instructions to ChatGPT. I uploaded my resume and I mentioned like, what changes do I need to do specifically in my resume in order to follow these instructions? 2 minutes later, I had my answer. A task that would have spent 5 hours on probably myself. I spit out an answer within 2 minutes. Another one thing to consider for modeling and thinking about this perspective, think of it more of a sequence, not necessarily as a one-shot behavior, because like, oh, AI is here, you're done. It's more of a sequence in a sense like a document is coming in, you probably need to open up, you probably need to convert it to a specific format, you probably need to run an analytical model on this, aggregate all the results, sequence it to something else. So as you're thinking about this virtual agent application, job application, what other sequences can you replace for yourself that will help you? I'm going to make an assumption, and forgive me if I'm wrong. As an analyst, you probably need to stay abreast of all the different news topics and all the different activities and all the different conferences. For some reason, I feel like conferences, announcements and conferences informations is like the least organized information out there. It's less unstructured. So if you, let's say, if I want to go to conferences to like 20 different topics, you have to do research manually. Now, that is a perfect task for AI to monitor and research. This is something that I've done here in upstate New York. I have linked up to 37 different websites, which scrapes information on a weekly basis, extracts all the different conferences and events, and uploads it to one site. I built it in 1 hour using Lovable and using Firecrawl with no code included. So in a sense, like something that like that you can leverage in your profession to stay abreast of all the different conferences when they happen, so you can do the scheduling much better. Or maybe even not you doing the scheduling, maybe AI can do the scheduling and purchase the tickets for you automatically.
No, thank you very much. I think that the trigger, and also think about hiring another person to do that, is a very good kind of way to think about it. Now, just recently I've been using AI to help my daughter to do homework. That's a very strong trigger.
Hey, you
Thank
should be doing it yourself.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm going to bring us back real quick and apologize to James because I think I asked his two questions together and we really only addressed one. So how can someone build and demonstrate capability in AI from a cold start when you're not a corporate employee? Thoughts?
What do you mean by not a corporate employee?
Well, the question before,
And maybe James
you
can come
referenced
on the camera.
freelancers.
Maybe James can come on camera. And you tell
Yeah,
us.
James, can you color us for the question?
No, of course, of course. I mean, in the last session that we had, which was fantastic, by the way, a lot of the reference was when trying to get into the AI realm and to build your experience, you're doing that through projects that appear in a sort of a corporate context. You know, that things are going on, there are opportunities, but when you're working, let's say, in a freelance capacity, or you're a consultant or a fractional worker, it's harder to sort of push yourself into those projects. And so my question is, from the outside looking in, where do you create those opportunities? How do you position yourself as a leader, but also sort of build that muscle?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things that come to mind is, again, ability of AI to process multiple disconnected sources of information. As a freelancer, you're searching for an opportunity in the sea of data. And what I think AI can be helpful there is, if you have a set of prospects, let's say thousands of companies that you monitor that might generate that opportunity for you. It's monitoring all the public talks, all the Twitter, all the blogs, all the calls if the company is public, any personal information you can find on the leaders of the company, anything that is out there, and ask AI. I'll process all that information on a regular basis. As soon as new pieces of data coming out, what do you see opportunity for me as a freelancer? And you give it your job resume to come in and offer this set of individuals to be helpful with. And I don't know what the answer will be, but I know it probably will be the same kind of activities that you will be doing yourself as a person, going and talking to those people individually, or you're going to be listening to their fire chats, or you're going to be asking. I feel like it's the same thing. Another opportunity is that perhaps if you do have a chance to score a direct conversation with them, have your notes be analyzed by AI and say, listen, this is my role. This is what we talked about. What opportunities do you see me for add value? In a sense, they are your co-thinker, they are your co-pilot. In a sense, it's really great. And this is something I mention all the time when talking about AI. AI is fantastic about generating menu of options. I think as humans, I'll generalize, hopefully a lot of people's brains work the same. We suck at generating options if you just kind of put us in a spot. Give me 25 different colors. We cannot do that. I think our brains are organized more like a tree pattern. We can talk about things which are related to each other in our memory context. But when we need to generate a list of things, I think it's really hard. And I think this is what's something that AI can actually do really fast for us. Give us a lot of data. Here's a context of me. Give me all the opportunities. And I think as you put in more and more and more and more data into that soup, and you introduce yourself into it, it's going to be able to create a lot of opportunities for you that way. Now, will work in practice, hopefully, but it's something that you just need to try out.
Yeah, that's great. Let me just pile a little bit on top of that. So I think, James, if you're a freelancer or other freelancers out there, consultants out there, you found a way to create value for your clients. They hire you for a reason. And I would look at the way you create value today for your clients, and then think about what you could do that's a huge leap forward in your ability to create value. You could ask yourself, what, for example, would I want to know about the future that would help people today, help me today, or help my clients today? You could, because it's going to be much less about hours in a day than it is about the value you generate. And So if you can think about how to use AI, and not just generative AI is amazing, but there's other tools available to you, and and there's no shame in this, but remember, the value isn't in the technology. The value is in the insights you generate that cause your clients to make money or have a better day or whatever it is you do. And so if you can find a way to use AI in that capacity, you're not only demonstrate your capability, but you've also differentiated yourself from other freelancers that do the similar work. And that's why I say do something big, not incremental, but big, like doubling your productivity for your clients. That kind of activity, you could do anything.
Really helpful. Thank you so much.
Puts me in mind a little bit of Professor Nikos and Kivan's work around, you've got to find your horizontal use cases, i.e. the things that make your day better, more productive. And that can be from a personal perspective, helping the kids with the homework, or from a job perspective, but also those vertical use cases, which to James's point are by virtue of them being vertical within an organization more often than not. And then mixing the two to get your experience and to keep kind of refreshing where you can deploy AI for those productivity gains to enhance that value, whether for yourself or within an organizational context. And you mentioned tools there, Toby, as well, which is another question that came in right at the beginning that we missed, was highlighting some of the key strengths and limitations of the major AI tools available today. Now, on Monday, we talked about there's a performance rating of each tool and that you can see that. But I think, on the call, there might be some people keen to understand, ChatGPT performs well overall, the question says, but it struggles with word limits or specific instructions. We also talked a little bit about hallucinations today. What kind of tools do you recommend that we at least become familiar with, that are good kind of across the board? And then there's a specific question around presentations without altering original content. That's something that will take so long to do, doing a PowerPoint presentation. That's surely something we can devolve to AI. So do you know what tools we should be using there?
So let me go back to the first bit of that. And then we'll come back to the tool. But yeah, so the generative AI components that are producing text, for example, you really, as a human, need to take everything with a grain of salt, meaning it sounds legit. In fact, it's been developed to sound like it's legitimate. But so there's a phrase that goes around that says, look, it makes me an expert in everything I don't know anything about. And when I ask it about something I know something about, it just sounds ridiculous. It sounds like, what? I mean, it's made up jargon. It's just kind of like, and so that makes you question everything else that you don't know about. You don't know enough about to question. Now, yes, there's the RAG is a new add-on. It's not even that new. It's about 4 years old. It means retrieval augmented generation. Basically what it does when you ask ChatGPT to tell you something about something, it uses the language engine of the GPT, but it goes and checks the facts against a known factual database. So it could be your own, or it could be, God help us, Wikipedia, but it looks at the facts and then it says, okay, the facts are real. Here is the answer in English, that kind of thing. And so more and more, and that's to get rid of hallucinations, which are things that are completely fabricated. Which, if you know the subject, I'm serious, you go in and ask it something about an area you know a lot about, and prepare yourself to be amazed. And then that makes you question everything else. And you should question what comes out of those things when it comes to creating facts. And what was the second? And Vlad, I don't know, I want to make sure you can chime in too.
No, for sure. I use a model here as more of a marble. Like, in a sense, when we're asking anything of ChatGPT, we're looking for an answer. And Michelangelo at some point said that the statue is locked in a marble and he has to unlock it, and he knows what it is. He has to unlock it and find out what it is. And I think when we're searching for answer, we're searching for truth, we're doing it in the same way. We're looking at this piece of marble from different ways, and we're trying to figure out what we can chisel away And in order to look at this marble from all different places, when we're in one perspective, we need all these different mirrors. And I will drop with the metaphysical, like in the way I think we need all these different tools to actually understand what the things it looks like from different perspectives. And I think we're in that stage of technology development. What we must use multiple tools in order to get different viewpoints, as if we would be asking multiple different people to get viewpoints on a specific thing. Because I don't personally think when it comes to opinions that there is an ultimate truth, maybe in the physical fact, but it still could be also from a matter of perspective. So I think the answer is there. One is to definitely use multiple tools to see what kind of answers it brings up. Like Gemini just released a brand new model. We have no idea what it's truthful, what its faults are, what can it do, what it cannot do. ChatGPT has been around for a while. Anthropic, Claude, like all these different tools will give you slightly different answers, and sometimes in a place of opinions, there might be not a right answer. Another way, and when you brought up presentations, there could be a way of right now halfway of doing the presentations where not necessarily rewriting all the content. You can ask for it to tell you content for each of the slide and how does it compare to the existing content. There are mitigating behaviors that you can ask to implement in order before we can actually start seeing it writing the presentations from scratch. So in a sense, understanding its vulnerabilities, understanding its issues for each specific models, it's where the answer is. Another thing is when it comes to very, very rare specific knowledge, I think at some point somebody came up with analysis of x-rays or analysis of, let's say, farming data community in a very small place. AI might not actually have any of that data. So in the sense of finding a model which has been trained on a specific data or fine-tuning a bigger model by introducing that data could be the only answer for you to kind of go forward. In the sense, sometimes you could be asking questions that AI might not have. So sorry not to give you like a yes or no and like here's a list of tools of things that you can use. I think the answer is more closer to let's think of it as a team of other people that will be asking for opinions, and all of them would have slightly different opinions, and it takes time for us to understand its faults in order to kind of mitigate and work through those.
Thank you. Just trying to see if there are other questions. There's one I want to go back to from Jeremy. From an MBA perspective, isn't the ultimate goal of AI to boost profit? We've already seen this in factories where machines replace most workers. Couldn't the same happen with intellectual work? AI doing most of the thinking with just a few humans supervising. But if AI takes over and people are left without meaningful work or income, isn't there a serious risk of social unrest? After all, AI has no needs, people do. It's an existential one to bring us near our close, right?
The happy note, the happy landing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can try, Toby, if you want. I think I think there is always a chance of that. I think a chance of that with or without AI out there. And in a sense, humans are still in control of the resources that make AI powerful. And at some point, we tend to make decisions when enough unrest has been demonstrated or enough need has been demonstrated for us to roll back certain initiatives and start addressing through financial or through supplementing income initiatives to address certain needs. While we do have needs, I think in the end, there is an opportunity for all of us to benefit equally from food production, from babysitting and daycare, from robotic implementations of those skills. But as I mentioned before, I think it's a very careful balance about what timeline we're going to do that before unrest becomes a very important priority for us to address.
Thanks, Vlad. Toby, I can see you're thinking deeply.
Yeah, this is, well, it's complicated, but the first bit of this is, aren't companies concerned with profit? Yes, I mean, largely. And good companies will challenge AI with their toughest issues. And I've seen and built AI engines that will take into consideration margin on product for recommendations, for example, as well as availability. And all of this is just basically to avoid stockouts in a retail sense and to promote increased margin, thus profit, presumably. So yes, I think that that is definitely where the focus is today. It's not just about removing cost or humans. It's about all sorts of things too, to make the business healthy. If that is your metric, profit's a metric. It isn't for the government necessarily, and they have different metrics. Fine. I think I'll just take an example from, there was a lot of thinking back when computers first came out, the desktop computer, and they said, you know, what's going to happen, of course, is that humans will do the same level of productivity in 20 hours that they used to do in 40. And this largely came to transpire. And so the thinking was, well, humans are going to do one of two things. They're going to say, wow, I just did everything I used to do in the week in 20 hours instead of 40. This is going to be amazing. I'm going to spend the next 20, reading books and thinking deep thoughts and going to the beach, bird watching, etc. Or I suppose a human gets to choose, I get to work 40 and just be twice as productive. And the reason I would do that as a human is so that I can consume. I can make more money and I can consume more. And I think we all know the path that the humans decided to take. And I suspect it wouldn't be terribly different this time. I don't see 20, 30-hour work weeks, meaning we're all just sitting around the rest of the week. I think humans have already voted and we're being consumers, and we're going to say, well, I want a better life. I want twice as many holidays and I want a better car, or whatever it might be, is what we're going to see at least in the short term. So I don't see complete collapse of society yet. But again, my vision into the future is quite limited.
Thanks, guys. Now, as we come close to the close, there was a question in from Wenjing, which I really liked, and I just wanted to bring us kind of right back to that, the Alumni Career Center ethos of learning, right? So she talks about, instead of waiting for her company to implement AI, she started experimenting for her own career, journaling her learning, doing a course with LBS on AI for business analytics. Nice one, excellent plug, enjoyed that. But she'd like to dig deeper into experimenting with AI. And so could we get a couple of suggestions from each of you about what we could do now to just get better at all this stuff?
Go ahead.
Yep.
Pat, yeah.
I think this is actually a first step that is very useful to ask AI. Take that question, open up your favorite GPT prompt, and ask it, over the 12 months, what are the best things I can do? Again, here's my job responsibility, here's my life, here's my resume. What should I be doing, and in what form, what classes should I be taking in order to become much better at X? In a sense, it's still on us to set the outcome of what we want to do. Just better in any direction, it's too broad. We don't really have that much time. AI will give you back a 12 months plan with links to every course, as long as you use the deep research. And I think it will be able to answer that better than myself in the moment with more specifics. But I would only address the methodology. The more hours you spend on something, you're absolutely bound to be much better at it. You cannot learn surfing by standing on the beach on the board. You have to be in the water. You have to be failing. You have to be failing. You have to be failing until you actually get the traction. And intuitively, you start feeling it as opposed to logically. And if you're not doing it, if you're just reading books about it, you're not going to go forward. That's just my has-been experience climbing the learning curves at different startups that I worked at. And hopefully it's the same for you. But the more work hours you put into that, you're bound to be better.
Yeah, brilliant. And let me base my answer on what Vlad said as well. And that is, so if you're in a particular industry, you can ask a GPT, say, hey, look, how will AI impact my industry? In what ways? And it will list out 20 different ways. You can look at that list and say, wow, okay, that's kind of interesting. I'm really curious about these three over here. You can learn more about it. And I would say from a business perspective, we want to move toward understanding its capabilities, benefits, and risks without jumping into the algorithms. So then you find out that time series forecasting is an amazing way to predict the future demand for your products but it only works for about 2 weeks. But that's okay because I can use 2 weeks to help inform manufacturing. Great. You're starting to understand how you can have real impact. And then if you feel comfortable in that space, if you're in a corporate setting, you do a project, you get off of the beach and into the water, and you find a project that you can do with a small blast area, meaning you don't, if things don't go well, you don't risk the entire company. You look for results, you check against results, against your hopes and dreams of what it might come out to be, and you check that and you say, okay, this is good, this is positive, but we need to change a few things for next time. And then all of a sudden you're in the game. You've learned one, you've done one, you've seen the benefit, which is hugely important for executives to get behind, because right now the return on investment for AI projects is highly unknown. The only thing we know about is the preposition on. The return and the investment are unknown, which makes it super risky. And this is why so many companies are kind of standing on the sidelines on the beach going, yeah, I know this looks important, but I just I'm not quite ready to get there. So I think it's an iterative step to find something in your space that makes sense, and then learn a little bit more about it, get closer to it, and then do a project.
Thanks, Toby. Right, we've gone over unbelievably. But thank you so much, both of you, Vladimir and Toby, for being with us today. Just a reminder for our LBS alumni on the call, Vlad is one of our alumni coaches. So, if you want to dig more into this from a career perspective, encourage you to go on london.edu/alumni career centre, look at the coaching page, see if a conversation with Vlad would be of value. Also, obviously, Toby is a hugely valued member of our alumni community as well, and I'm sure will be welcome to connecting with you all on LinkedIn. Toby will be back with me on Friday, where we'll be welcoming Andrew McCaskill for the third section of this 5-part series, where we're going to dig into how is AI disrupting the talent acquisition process? What does that mean for candidates? How do we think about when we're looking for new roles or trying to source an opportunity in the market, when are we going to be really bumping up against AI, and what can we be better doing to prepare and leverage it to succeed in the hiring process? So digging into lots and lots of stuff there on Friday. So hopefully see a bunch of you back with us then. We'll be following that up next week with Professor Randall Peterson on Wednesday, talking about AI and leadership, and then the session that Toby mentioned next Friday to round out our series on AI and resilience. So thank you for joining us today. Again, thank you, Toby, for hosting such a wonderful discussion. And thank you, Vlad, for sharing your thoughts so candidly. Lots of food for thought. Everyone on the call will be following up with the recording and with our Careers in AI playbook once we've put that together after all 5 sessions. But in the meantime, any feedback, please do reach out to me and let us know how you enjoyed this session on the feedback form that pops up at the end of the call. But enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Hope to see you at another Alumni Career Centre event soon. Bye for now. Hello, everyone.